The first trade domino has come tumbling down like a tree out in the forest. Timber! Bradley Beal has been traded. He has been excommunicated from the Beltway, no longer part of the Washington Wizards, although it's not official. If you haven't heard yet, and perhaps you actually disengage over the weekend, so maybe you missed it. And if you did, we have been told the Washington Wizards have put a spell together, and they are sending and finalizing a trade of Bradley Beal to the Suns in exchange for the rotting carcass of Chris Paul, his contract, Landry Shamet, yes, and multiple, not first-round picks, second-round picks, and a pick swap, which is always my favorite. I like when we swap picks. So nice to swap picks. Reminds me back at lunch, I used to swap my tuna fish sandwich for peanut butter and jelly sometimes. I'd make that swap, and I do that at lunch sometimes back in elementary school. So Washington is not expected to keep Chris Paul. Why would they? He's not very good anymore, and he's old, and they're expected to buy him out. They're trying to work out some kind of trade. The math on that is fuzzy. There's some fuzzy math on that, and much to my dismay, much to my heartburn, the Clippers have prominently been mentioned in that as a possibility. But don't bury the lead, my man. It's all about Bradley Beal going to the Suns. And so let's discuss who won the Bradley Beal trade, the Suns or the Wizards. All right, so I have on my Maller report card, the Suns get a B+, and the Wizards in F-. What? I know the mayor in Washington back in the day used to smoke crack. Are the Wizards front office executives doing that as well? That's the pack of dog poo you got back for Bradley Beal? Is he missing his right leg? Maybe his ankle is bent the wrong way. I must not have seen that. I must not have gotten that memo. My goodness. So I've got AirPod, Greyhound bus, and 3 martini lunch. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make a nice, smooth landing at Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix for Bradley Beal. So, Bradley Beal is the quintessential good player on a bad team, but you don't really know what you don't know, whether or not that will translate on a good team. You think you know, but you don't know. And we've seen examples over the years of guys that put up great stats, and Bradley Beal was averaging over 30 points a game at one stretch in his time in Washington. And then you go to a different situation, and all of a sudden, wow, not so good there. But he does escape the Sorcerer's Workshop in Washington, and now a super team! Woo! Yeah, the Denver Nuggets, not a super team. The Miami Heat, not a super team. Played for the NBA Finals. But now the Suns are like, no, we're all in. We're all in on this. So you're going to have Kevin Durant on one side, Devin Booker on the other, and then Bradley Beal. And for now, DeAndre Ayton is also in the mix. And so you've got that inverted triangle of a roster in Phoenix, and they think this is the way to salvation in Arizona, only to watch it blow up in their face. The Suns are going to be the gambling favorite to win the championship, but are they really? Do you really trust Kevin Durant or Devin Booker, who's vanished in elimination games back-to-back years, a coach killer in Devin Booker in closeout game situations? My goodness. And Bradley Beal, you don't know for sure that this guy will be able to get it done, but it's you look at the Suns roster now, and they're the ultimate AirPod-shaped club. There's a lot up top, right? There's a lot up top, like AirPod. A lot up top. You've got Booker, Durant, Beal, and Ayton at $163 million, and then below those guys will be the players at the soup kitchen. If you were playing Monopoly, the Suns would have Boardwalk and Park Place, but they'd also have intermingling on the board. They'd have Baltic and Mediterranean avenues on your Monopoly board. So they'd combine all those together, and hope it works out. But the Suns, they're going to have 4, unless they get rid of Ayton, which is still in play here. It's early on. This is a big week for trades. But at this moment, we can do the show in the moment. The Suns, at this time, have 4 max contracts. And the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, they limit the number of max contracts you can have, and then they just kick in the nuts over and over again, and they poke you in the eyes if you go over the threshold. There's aprons, kind of like in a kitchen. There's different aprons, and the Suns at this point would be above the second apron, which means they will literally have no one else on the team other than those 4 guys. They will be having auditions. If you would like to play for the Suns, you might want to send your resume in. You'll have to wash the jerseys and probably mop the court, but you could do it to fill out the Suns roster. Are we going to hear about the Suns culture? Are they going to go get a bunch of guys like the Miami Heat, undrafted players? They're going to have to. It would appear based on what I've seen. Now, as we continue this diatribe here, how will Bradley Beal fit with Arizona? You know, the team in Arizona, the Suns in Phoenix, how's he going to fit in his new environment and all that stuff? So how does Bradley Beal do in Phoenix? That is the great unknown. I am not as optimistic as many of the NBA pundits that I have seen opining on this. I am skeptical. He's going to have to get acclimated to his new environment. That's standard operating procedure. But from the Wizards side of things also, what a terrible trade. You just gave away Bradley Beal. And I think Bradley Beal's got some – he doesn't play defense. His three-point shooting's gone down the last couple of years. But he's got to be worth more than Landry Shamet and a couple of second-round picks and a pick swap. Is that where we are? And Chris Paul, that contract, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, from the Suns side of things, you make the trade because you're giving up nothing. You're giving up absolutely nothing, and you're getting somebody that can at least play, score some points for you. If nothing else, we'll see how the blend works. But that concoction of players in Phoenix, I gave the Suns a B+ because on the Mallet report card, I am not as confident that this guy is going to sit in the back of the Greyhound bus while Kevin Durant and Devin Booker ride the bus in the front seat. They're driving the bus, and he's in the back. I'm not convinced that he's that guy, that he's going to be willing to do that and be marginalized and floundering as the third option there. And Beal is getting paid top dollar, and he's supposed to take a tertiary role in Phoenix. What could possibly go wrong? Now, the good news is all these guys are hurt, including Bradley Beal. So even though it looks great, Durant will miss half the season. He always does these days. Devin Booker's not Mr. Reliable anymore. And Bradley Beal has missed almost 35% of the Washington Wizards games. Almost 35% of the Wizards games in the last 4 years. Last 4 years, he's not been there, dependable and all that. He's missed 101 regular season games with injuries, some of them real, some of them load management. Fugazi made up injuries. All right, now the last word here, a number of you were busting my chops as this trade has been bouncing around the echo chamber. You're very excited about this because the other leg of the trade is that the Wizards acquired the contract of the rotting Chris Paul, and that they're going to flip him to the Clippers because the Wizards GM is a former Clipper executive. So my perspective, what do you make of the Clippers being very interested in bringing back Chris Paul? Now, I wouldn't trade Clipper Darryl for Chris Paul, okay? I would rather have Clipper Darryl. I know the man can take a punch. I don't know about Chris Paul. So I'd rather have Clipper Darryl than Chris Paul. So we'll start with that. But if you can get him as a buyout, fine. But the whole Chris Paul thing is illogical and tells me the Clippers are still suffering from neurosis. There's still some issues there in the front office. Chris Paul, at this point, is contaminated. You got the best years of Chris Paul's career back in the Lob City days, and it wasn't good enough. You got the greatness of Chris Paul, and it still failed. When you had that highfalutin team with those hammered dunks from Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. And to think that you're going to bring him in at this point at age 38 and you're going to add the old gangster and everything will be fine here. There'll be no snap, crackle, pop. I mean, think about what the Clippers would be if they add Chris Paul. I don't think they're going to trade for him. So let's say they just get him in a salary contract buyout, and he comes to the Clippers. There's this blind spot that I look at, and I'm like, what are you doing? It's like the kryptonite's right there. You know you're allergic to it, and you're still grabbing at the kryptonite with Chris Paul. The man can no longer shoot. He can't. He's shot. During the 7 playoff games he played against the Clippers and also the Denver Nuggets, for Chris Paul, he shot 41% from the floor, 32% from three-point range. He struggled to even make foul shots. And during the regular season, his numbers were down in the regular season. You look at points, assists, steals, rebounds, all the numbers down. And you drop Chris Paul in his late 30s into the Clipper locker room. And what are they planning for the playoffs? Are they going to call their playoff run next year the 3-martini lunch? Because Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and CP3 will all get together. They'll have martinis and watch the playoffs on television while the other players play, while they're all out with some kind of injury. Because we know Kawhi Leonard, if you sneeze on him, he'll be back at his resort-style mansion, his casa in San Diego, having a grand old time. Paul George, by George, if you look at him the wrong way, he can't play. And CP3 gets out of bed at this point, and his leg starts acting up. So that's what you've got. All right.